The Führer bunker, buried deep beneath the crumbling ruins of Berlin, was a tomb of concrete and despair. It was April 29, 1945, shortly after midnight, and the air hung heavy with the acrid scent of fear and defeat. The distant thunder of Soviet artillery echoed through the walls like the relentless heartbeat of an encroaching doom. Adolf Hitler, the once unassailable leader of the Third Reich, paced the narrow corridors of his underground lair, his face gaunt and shadowed by the dim electric lights. At 56 years old, his body betrayed him, trembling hands from Parkinson's, a stooped posture from years of strain, but his eyes still burned with a fanatic's fire, though dimmed by the reality closing in. In the map room, converted hastily into a makeshift chamber of solemnity, Hitler stood before Eva Braun, his longtime companion. She was 33, her blonde hair neatly pinned, her dress simple yet elegant amid the chaos. Martin Bormann, the ever-present party chancellery chief, and Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister with his clubfoot and sharp gaze, served as witnesses. The ceremony was brief, civil, devoid of pomp. Hitler, in his uniform stained with the dust of a dying empire, exchanged vows with Eva in a voice barely above a whisper. "I take you as my wife," he said, his words clipped and mechanical. Eva smiled faintly, her eyes glistening, not with joy, but with a resigned acceptance. They had waited years for this, and now it came in the 11th hour, a union sealed not in triumph but in twilight. Following the vows, they retreated to a small adjoining room for a modest wedding breakfast. Champagne flowed sparingly, toasts raised in hollow cheers. Bormann clapped Hitler on the back, murmuring congratulations, while Goebbels watched with a mix of envy and loyalty. Eva, now Frau Hitler, leaned close to her husband, whispering words of devotion. But Hitler's mind wandered. News had arrived earlier that day of Benito Mussolini's gruesome end, shot by partisans, his body strung up in Milan alongside his mistress, Cloretta Petacci, for the mobs to desecrate. The image haunted him. "I will not let them take me alive," he muttered to Eva, his fist clenching. She nodded, her hand on his, understanding the pact they had made. As the clock ticked toward 1 a.m., Hitler summoned his secretary, Trottel Junge. The young woman, her fingers poised over the typewriter, sat in a dimly lit office amid stacks of papers and the hum of ventilation fans. Hitler dictated his last will and testament with deliberate precision. The political testament railed against the Jews, whom he blamed for the war, and expelled Hermann Göring and Heinrich Himmler from the party for their perceived betrayals, Göring for seeking peace negotiations, Himmler for secret contacts with the Allies. He appointed Grand Admiral Karl Donitz as his successor as head of state and Goebbels as chancellor. The personal will distributed his meager possessions, art to a Munich gallery, valuables to his siblings and aides. "I die with a happy heart," he proclaimed, though his voice cracked with exhaustion. Junge typed furiously, the clatter of keys punctuating the silence. By 4 a.m., the documents were signed, witnessed by Bormann, Goebbels, and others. Hitler retired to his quarters, but sleep eluded him. He lay beside Eva, staring at the ceiling, the weight of failure pressing down like the earth above. Doubt gnawed at him. The cyanide ampules, provided by Himmler through SS physician Ludwig Stumpfiger, might be ineffective, or worse, a ploy in Himmler's treason. Hitler ordered SS physician Werner Haas to test one. In the early hours, Haas and Hitler's dog handler, Fritz Torno, administered a capsule to Blondie, Hitler's beloved German shepherd. The dog, loyal to the end, convulsed briefly and died. Hitler watched impassively, satisfied that the poison worked. "Good," he said softly, stroking the lifeless fur one last time. Blondie had been his constant companion, a symbol of unwavering fidelity in a world of betrayals. Her death was a rehearsal for his own. As dawn broke on April 30th, though no light penetrated the bunker, the situation grew dire. Soviet forces, under Marshal Georgy Zhukov, encircled Berlin. The Red Army's artillery pounded the city relentlessly, shells exploding overhead like judgment from the gods. Around 1 a.m., Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel reported to Hitler, the remaining German forces were trapped, defenses crumbling. No relief was coming from the phantom armies Hitler had imagined. The Führer listened in silence, his face ashen. By 2:30 a.m., Hitler emerged from his rooms, shuffling down the corridor. He gathered about 20 people, mostly women, including secretaries and cooks, in a farewell ritual. His handshakes were weak, his words mumbled, "Thank you for your service." Tears flowed freely among the group, some saluted rigidly, others wept. Eva stood by his side, composed, her new wedding ring glinting faintly. The morning dragged on in a haze of reports and despair. At around 10:30 a.m., Hitler met with General Helmuth Weidling, commander of the Berlin defense area. Weidling, haggard from street fighting, delivered the grim truth. Ammunition was nearly depleted, the end would come within 24 hours. The fighting will cease by evening, he said. Hitler, seated at his desk cluttered with maps of a lost war, nodded slowly. Weidling requested permission for a breakout attempt. Initially, Hitler demurred, but by 1 p.m., he relented. You may try, but no surrender. It was a hollow concession. Berlin was a cauldron from which few would escape. Lunch was served around noon in the bunker's dining area, a sparse meal of pasta and sauce, eaten in somber silence. Hitler sat with Eva, Trottel Junge, another secretary, and his cook, Constanze Manziarli. The conversation was light, almost surreal. Hitler spoke of better times, of Eva's beauty, even joking about her love for well-dressed women. But the undercurrent was finality. He promised the women vials of cyanide if they chose that path. I regret I cannot give you a better farewell gift, he said, his voice tinged with irony. Eva ate little, her eyes fixed on him with quiet adoration. After lunch, around 2:30 p.m., the final goodbyes began. Hitler and Eva moved through the bunker, shaking hands with staff and officers. Bormann, Goebbels, Generals Hans Krebs and Wilhelm Burgdorf, Hitler Youth leader Artur Axmann, all received a nod or a word. It has been an honor, Hitler murmured to Goebbels, who would soon follow his leader into death. Eva, elegant in a blue dress, smiled sadly, hugging the secretaries. They retired to Hitler's personal study, SS Sturmbannführer Otto Gunche standing guard outside the door. Inside the small room, furnished with a sofa, desk, and a portrait of Frederick the Great, the couple faced their end. The air was thick with the smell of gun oil and impending finality. Hitler held his Walther PPK 7.65mm pistol, Eva a cyanide capsule. They sat on the sofa, side by side. It is time, Hitler said, his voice steady for the first time that day. Eva nodded, biting into the capsule. The scent of bitter almonds filled the air as cyanide took hold. She slumped, lifeless, her head on his shoulder. Hitler placed the pistol to his right temple. In that moment, flashes of memory assaulted him. The beer hall putsch, the roaring crowds at Nuremberg, the conquests of Europe. All reduced to this, defeat at the hands of Bolshevik hordes and treacherous allies. He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the bunker at approximately 3:30 p.m. Gunche, smelling burnt gunpowder, waited briefly before alerting others. Heinz Ling, Hitler's valet, entered first with Bormann. They found the bodies. Hitler slumped forward, blood pooling from the temple wound, the pistol at his feet, Eva beside him, no visible injury but the telltale odor of poison. Gunche confirmed. A single gunshot, self-inflicted. Word spread quickly. Goebbels, Krebs, Burgdorf, and Axmann viewed the scene, faces etched with shock and relief. Per Hitler's orders, the bodies were wrapped, Hitler's in a blanket, and carried up the emergency stairs to the shell-pocked garden of the Reich Chancellery. Amid falling artillery, aides Erich Kempke, Peter Hogel, Ewald Lindlof, and others doused them with petrol from cans. An initial attempt to ignite failed, Bormann lit papers, and flames erupted. The group saluted as the fire consumed the remains, black smoke rising into the Berlin sky. From 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m., more petrol was added amid the bombardment. By evening, only charred bones and ashes remained, shoveled into a shallow bomb crater by Lindlof. The rug from the study, stained with blood, was burned separately. In the bunker below, the aftermath unfolded. Goebbels assumed brief chancellorship, but by May 1st, he and his wife Magda would poison their 6 children and themselves. Krebs and Burgdorf shot themselves as Soviets stormed the city. Donitz, from afar, announced Hitler's heroic death on radio, claiming he fell fighting Bolshevism, a final lie. The Red Army captured the bunker on May 2nd. Dental remains confirmed Hitler's identity, though conspiracy theories would persist. His ashes, scattered or destroyed, marked the end of a regime that had engulfed the world in flames. In those last 24 hours, Hitler transitioned from defiant leader to broken man, his empire crumbling like the city above. The bunker, once a fortress of power, became